So no intro today. We're going straight into the show. I am Jared. Welcome to Comics League, and I'm here with legendary producer slash director Sam Liu. Well, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. So this was like the most random thing ever. So Talani and I could cover Doom that came to Gotham, and you comment on the post, and I was like, wait a second here.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because I just happened to see your link, and I was just like, oh, I wonder if they like it or not, So
it was awesome. So normally whenever I have a new guest, I normally ask very specific questions. So like, what got you like into superheroes?
I think it's like most kids, maybe, I kind of was, nerdy. I was, introverted. I'm still introverted. I'm probably the worst interviewer, so I apologize ahead of time. So I get really nervous and I have like stage fright and all that kind of stuff. But
it's all good.
You're
Don't
fine.
worry about it.
You're fine. You're
all
fine.
good. All good.
Superheroes kind of gave you, I don't know. It's like that sort of wish fulfillment type of thing, right? I think also because of the art, largely because of the art, because, like when I was a kid, I'm older. So, there'd be these things, which I don't know if you guys know about, but there were like these bookstores, right, in malls. And so when my mom would go shopping, she would just drop me off and I would just hang out at the bookstore, and I would just, either at first I was like, reading the science fiction and sort of fantasy, sort of like, looking at those covers. And then they started having like comics in certain stores and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like the sort of Sons of Origins, like those old sort of like, it's like a collection of like Marvel's sort of like origin sort of comics.
I see.
Iron Man, like Thor and Avengers and things like that. And so I would spend all my time basically looking at art books and comics. So it kind of started from there, I suppose.
That's awesome. What has been your favorite superhero to work on in your career?
Wow. It's weird because I've worked on, I feel like I've done so many that the whole, journey of the hero is kind of there's only so many of those types of stories, right? And I kind of feel like we've done like so many of them that it's kind of hard. I mean, I think, as I'm older, like when I was younger, you know what I mean? I was fascinated by the whole sort of like, powerful poses and the human anatomy and the fight scenes and all that stuff. But as I'm getting older, I feel like I'm a lot more interested in sort of like the psychology of characters, like why are they heroes? What do they sacrifice? Are they sacrificing the nuanced decisions that they sort of make, and sort of, the story, I suppose, is kind of what I'm interested in most. And so I think even through college, because I was kind of like, again, like an introvert kind of emo kid, I liked literature as well. And so I think like Neil Gaiman's Sandman was like a big one. A lot of the Vertigo books, the Alan Moore Swamp Things and things like that, Shade the Changing Man and stuff like that. So I think the most fulfilling ones that, again, before this was, I think it was, I was amazed that I was able to do it, but it was that Death Short with Neil Gaiman's
that was
Death.
so good.
Yeah, the passion really shows through on that one. I just want to say thank you for creating such a wonderful short. Thank you.
It was nerve-wracking, right? Because again, I understand our audience is, capes and tights and big fight scenes and big fight choreography, and that had none of it, right? That's like a very sort of like small, personal, introspective, mental sort of health kind of story. I wasn't sure how people were going to react to it because again, it's all drama.
Now, that actually brings me to a question that I had. So a lot of the movies that you worked on were like adaptations of certain comic book storylines, like Under the Red Hood and such. Now, what I was wondering is, so I understand that like some stuff from the comics won't necessarily translate to like an animated movie or something like that. So how do you balance maintaining like the integrity of the work while also like dealing with that? Like, I don't know if it's an issue with adapting comics and like it's just making sure that you can cover like the heart of the story?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult, right? Because comics is sort of like the potentially like a bridge between literature and sort of like cartoons for sure, but kind of like live action, right? Is because it's a moving picture, whereas obviously the literature it's all in your head kind of a thing, right? And so, and also I feel like when you do something like a movie length or even a show length kind of thing, right? It's sort of like you control the tempo and it moves as fast as you sort of time it, all that kind of stuff, right? But when you're reading a book, you can stop, you can slow down, you have chapters, and so you can refresh and then kind of get back in, right? So you can just the structure of storytelling is very different in a book than it is obviously, when it's on screen, right? Because when it's on screen, this is going to start getting into the sort of like just, I don't know, like writing nerdship and stuff like that. But like you typically kind of like want to build to like a climax. You know what I mean? It's the act structure type of thing, right? You sort of, you set up the thing, you sort of, set the adventure or what they're trying to accomplish, what they're trying to find, what they're trying to sort of achieve. It comes to a point where there's a conflict, you know what I mean? The big conflict, again, there's like a certain type of like rhythm that kind of happens, and you usually only want to build to like one sort of like crescendo, and then you sort of need to like wrap up pretty quickly after that's done, right? Like Rocky, Bugs Life, you know what I mean? Samurai, things that are sort of like the traditional sort of Hollywood paradigm kind of like structure, right? So in chapters, you can sort of tell somebody's story, and then the very next chapter, you could tell a entirely different person's story. You can just jump back in again so again, like, and that doesn't jar you, right? When you're reading a book, but when you're watching a film, if you have too many sort of these kind of things, you get like fatigued, and just the experience is different. So, so that first of all, but then also for us, again, like we're not feature, I mean, our budgets are not Spider-Verse, right? Like we have like less than a year to make one. They have, closer to 5 years to make one, right? Our budgets are like $3 million. Their budget's like $100 million. Do you know what I mean? And so, so just kind of given kind of what we have and kind of knowing what it is, because again, sometimes we know when we try to overachieve, it's not going to work, right? Because again, it's just, they're not hiring the people that can sort of sustain this. And when you're trying to cram in too much information in, which arguably, I think the Doom that came to Gotham, there's almost too much material in it. And we had to cut, in all honesty, about half an hour out of it, and I really think that it needs at least 20 minutes out of that. Do you know what I mean? Because so anyways, those are the sort of like
hashtag
things.
Hashtag release the Sam cut.
That's a good one. I like that one.
Sorry, I couldn't resist. Sorry for interrupting you, Sam.
Yeah, it's all good. But and by the way, so Spider-Man brings up a good point. Yeah, Under the Red Hood is absolutely incredible. Like that is,
it's pretty solid.
That's one of the ones where I'm
too.
like, if you want to see a good, if you want to see an example of like page to screen as close as you can get, it's that one. 100% is that one.
Yeah, and that's a Brandon Vietti one, by the way. So I only helped on that one. I didn't like write that one, but
okay. But the other question, so a question that I have. So you worked on like a lot of the ones that were like in the previous like shared universe, did Death of Superman and such. Now, okay, so this is a question that may not have been like that may be a overhead decision, but I was curious about this. So a good portion of like the movies had Superman and Wonder Woman together as a couple.
Here we go.
My question is, okay, so I noticed that they broke up like off screen between like Justice League versus Teen Titans and Death of. Now my question is, what was the decision making for like that decision? Because to me that seemed a little jarring per se when going from movie to movie.
Yeah. So I'm answering for James Tucker, right? Because again, I was only sort of I'm the smaller producer on it, right? He's the main guy, right? He's the guy that basically orchestrates everything, right?
Yeah.
And I'm there to basically sort of help him, and I also sort of like I bring it, I basically build it, right?
Mhm.
And so the decision making for that was because of Death of Superman, right? It's because Death of Superman, it was an adaptation. The only way that James was comfortable taking the project, right? The reason that it was to sort of put it into his continuity, so there was going to be changes, right? And so within it, it's so, because this is the Death of Superman, Lois is such a huge part of it. They have to be in a relationship. It can't be Wonder Woman. Do you know what I mean? And so it became a thing because Reign of the Superman arguably is a Lois Lane story.
Yeah,
right?
pretty
And
much.
So again, Lois is like integral to this whole sort of, part of the story. So it became a thing where, again, just quite candidly, I feel like the whole New 52 thing was kind of thrust upon us. And I'm not sure that we were, I think like in the beginning, this is before, I came on and stuff like that. Like Wonder Woman was a very specific way. I think Superman was a very specific way, and they were kind of unlikable in a way, right? But I think eventually they sort of morphed back into kind of like what traditionally Superman and Wonder kind of women were. And so there's a lot of things that are sort of behind the scenes. You know what I mean? They aren't supposed to connect because they don't. The only reason they connect is because of James. James really wanted to make a connected universe, right? Part of that is because of like I was talking about budgets and all that kind of stuff. It's really difficult when we do like a Doom That Came to Gotham, or ones that Bruce typically works on, right? Or the standalones, right? Because you have to develop a style, and then you have to basically populate the world with that style, right? And this includes incidentals. This includes basically anybody that you kind of see, right? And that's a lot of work. We don't have the money or the time to do that. So again, the only way that we were able to sort of keep producing these kind of things is we gotta basically, one of the sort of things is like, can we just design Batman once, and then this will be Batman for the next 10 films? Can we design these people so we don't have to like reinvent them every single time just for this one movie, and then have it all that work basically get thrown away?
That makes sense.
So a lot of it again it's not sexy at all. It's budget. It's purely like numbers.
Wait, so you're telling me there is no grand conspiracy for this or that? At the end of the day, it's just business.
It's always just business.
Yeah, exactly.
You couldn't hold it in, could you, Nick?
Yeah, you couldn't hold it in, could you? But let me ask you this. So,
I think not.
let me ask you this. Where do you personally stand on the whole idea of Superman and Wonder Woman as a couple?
You couldn't help
Wait,
yourself.
I had to ask. I had to ask.
Again, I'm older, and I'm more of I kind of feel like fandom is this, right? It's kind of like whatever your entry drug was, or where your entry kind of thing is, like that has always got a special place for you.
There you go.
That becomes the rock that everything is built upon, right? And so if things change and it's done, I guess in an acceptable is dependent on who you are.
Depending on the fan, yeah, exactly.
Right. Then you sort of go with it, right? Especially if you sort of, it's all about sort of being comfortable with it, right? Every single new show, I feel like that, comes out, like fans hate it until it's gone, right? Until they get used to it, and then they sort of, Teen Titans was that way, right? Before Teen Titans Go, like Teen Titans 2000, 2003 or something like that. Again, people hated it when it first came out, right? But then like people love it now, right? Like a lot of people.
I still hate Teen Titans Go. So
okay, but not Go. I'm talking about the Glenmore comedy, 2003. So again, like Go had the reaction, partially because of that. But again, I don't know. That becomes a whole different thing, right? But I worked on the Batman, in early 2000 also, and people hated that when it first came out, and some people like still really love it, So I think it's just
the Batman
change
is definitely something that like has had a reevaluation in like the past 5 years, and I think nowadays it's viewed as like a really solid series. The character I gotta say, the character design choices you made were very bold. Like your Joker design was like very, very out there. Like you were very brave with with a lot of the character design choices, and I commend you for it.
Yeah, that's Jeff Matsuda, right? Who's a very close friend of mine. Like we were in comics together before animation and stuff like that. And he is a shape theory guy, right? It's like, I remember having this conversation with him where he's saying like, if you take like, and this is obviously because because Bruce Timm has a very certain specific kind of thing too, right? He tries to make things easier for the animators, right? So basically his shapes are all kind of similar, right? He's developed like a really refined, like a great theory for shapes, right? But that applies to like a lot of the characters, and that's on purpose, right? It's because he wants it to come back as best as possible, and so the animators don't have to like refigure out how this shape is different, right? Matsuda, on the other hand, right, is kind of like, if you look at a silhouette of a character, I don't want it to look like the same silhouette as another character. You know? And so his whole thing is just like silhouette based, is like everything is different, you know, and drastically different. So he's a, you know, I don't know. It's interesting. Just the two, you know, the diametric, almost like, you know, opposite sort of like, you know, ideas or places that they kind of come from, you know.
So,
and I want to go ahead and ask this and get this out of the way. I'm probably the only real fan that cares about Tim Drake at this point, but I have to ask.
Hey, I'm here, dude. What are you doing?
You're a new 52. If you actually grew up with the 90s and the Robin
I like
Solo
Tim
run,
Drake. Don't throw me under the bus.
Preach, brother. Preach. Speak for us.
you know what I'd be talking about. Hey, let us know in the comments if you actually read Robin the 90s series. Over 100 issues, mind you, but that's besides the point.
There you go.
What was this a higher? Okay, this was probably a higher up decision, but what made you guys decide to condense the Bat family and streamline Damian Wayne as the main Robin throughout the Decameron?
Oh, for the 52?
For the 52 portion, yes.
You know, that's an interesting question, because I think, you know, again, like I didn't start with it, right? I kind of became sort of a bigger director sort of towards the second half of it.
Okay.
Because I was working on the Green Lantern series at the time.
Which is amazing, by the way.
You know, it's funny because, again, it didn't do that all that well, but I remember being in the edit room with Bruce, and there's an editor that's been at Warner Brothers for a long time, and he started at the same time Bruce did, and he worked on Batman the Animated Series, blah blah blah, all that stuff, right, through all of the, you know, Batman the Animated Series, Justice League, Batman Beyond, and all that kind of stuff, right? And so I remember when we were in an edit session on Green Lantern, he was just like, "This is a really solid series."
It is.
He's like, I would put this up against like Justice League and all those, you know, which got a lot of love, but for some reason this one didn't get a lot of love. Maybe it was just because it's Green Lantern or something like that. But thank you anyways. But we were pretty proud of it. So
my one problem with the Green Lantern show is the change to the Red Lantern oath. I understand why you did that, because you don't, for like a show aimed at kids, you don't want an oath that says ripped from a corpse, now freshly dead. So I get it. It's just that for a second there, when I was watching it for the first time, I was like, did I hear that right? But it's fine. The rest of it is awesome. I love that show so much.
Yeah, it was different. You know, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, to be honest, when I was on it, because I'm not really sort of a comedy guy. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of endearing things about it. You know, it was really like emotional, and I don't know, I really enjoyed it. You know.
Plus, I'm a huge Green Lantern fan because of primarily Jeff Johns, but it's like I'm always a fan because I consider the Green Lanterns like DC's version of Star Wars, and to me, the Green Lantern show was close enough to being DC's version of Clone Wars. So I was like, okay, this is my show. There you go. I got two things on here.
Yeah.
No comment.
No comment. But yeah, so back to Jahid's question about the Bat family.
Oh, yeah. You would have to ask James Tucker, because, you know, again, quite honestly, I actually didn't even read any of the comics in the New 52, so I have no idea who Robin was. I haven't read a comic in like decades.
I would recommend trying the Superman and Wonder Woman series, because here's why. Yes, you are right that in the beginning of the New 52, Superman and Wonder Woman weren't exactly acting like their classic versions. In that series, they are.
Okay.
And close enough to the New 52. And what's up, Salty Texas? Thanks for the super sticker. So Spider-Man asks, Sam, at this point in your career, what would you consider a dream project?
Whew. Yeesh. I don't know if there's exactly one. I just kind of want to work on a project that, we have a good budget, a good schedule, but, we work in TV animation, so it's just like, I would love to like work without, there's always limitations, but with less limitations, I suppose,
True that. Now, speaking of Bruce Timm, I got a question. So I saw that you worked on the Killing Joke movie.
Yeah.
Oh, here we go.
I gotta ask this because of that. I gotta ask, like, certain things happen in the first half of that movie,
Right.
and I gotta wonder. Okay, so what was like the decision making behind like the first half of that movie, particularly like maybe the Batman Barbara stuff?
Okay, so again, I was a director on that, right? And so as a director, I don't come in at the very beginning, right? Especially when the scripts are being like made. I come in basically around the third draft, roughly around there, right? And so I remember reading it. I remember having, a similar kind of thing of like, I have no idea how this connects and blah, blah, right? But your job as a director is to kind of take what it is and try to like make something,
That works.
So to me anyways, right? Thematically, I kind of felt like the first half of the new stuff, right, is almost, it's a Barbara story, but it's about the abyss, right? Which again, Batman talks about a lot, right? It's about the whole thing of like things that will take you too far, right? And so it was her journey. So we tried to start it in the beginning. It was like her at the height of her, career, right? She's fighting crime at night with Batman. She's awesome, kicking a lot of ass, and she's, just really, she's at the peak of it, right?
Yeah.
And then she runs into this guy who's a psychopath, and he starts basically, it's becoming a lot more personal and dangerous. And she is starting to sort of fall into this, I am going to get this guy and I'm making bad decisions, right? Because again, I'm so far into this thing. I am, quote unquote, approaching the abyss, if not in the abyss, right? And so it becomes a thing where she realizes basically like she was going to kill him, right? Because at the end she was punching, and there's structurally, I kind of felt like it's this thing. And again, like the whole thing, again, like the notorious sort of sex scene and stuff like that, right? Again, I thought it was a little bit much too when I first read it, but I understand that they really wanted to, because again, like it's a controversial piece, right? And it's supposed to be an Elseworld kind of thing, right? I kind of feel like in a way too, it's supposed to be what noir was back then, right? Because I think how people, are desensitized to a lot of things, it's supposed to be shocking, right? And so if through the lens of maybe more of a noir, sort of a dark detective-ish kind of thing, again, it's just like the whole sex thing is supposed to be a mistake, right? I understand how they connect it, right? Because again, like
Jared, that's what I've been saying.
I know, Nick.
Oh.
He's been saying exactly what you're saying.
Okay.
My whole thing is just, why would Batman do it though? I get Batgirl doing it, but I'm like, why would Batman himself consent to that? Essentially, that's my issue with it.
Yeah. Again, I had similar questions too. And so we tried what we can that he doesn't initiate, she initiates, these types of things. And maybe, it needed more time to kind of, and that's the other thing too. I wish there was a little more time that one more scene of Barbara dealing with basically emotionally, like this is really awkward. And this is, you know what I mean? Like we made a mistake kind of a thing. And, just to sort of emphasize that. But anyways, these are all supposed to be mistakes that is basically examples of her downfall of like, I've lost control, and at the end, she's so mad at Paris Franz, right? That she was basically beating the snot out of him and she was going to kill him. She was just pounding him in a hamburger, right? And again, it was another kind of thing of where it's like Batman doesn't stop her. She needs to stop herself.
Yeah.
Right? Because she needs to understand, like, I am in the abyss right now. And so I need to step away. And so she gives up cowl, right? And so to me, like that is a transition for Batman to understand that I've just lost this person that was close to my, my life, not on a sexual level. It wasn't supposed to be about that.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. Cool.
And that he is reflecting upon his relationship with Joker, and that's what prompts him to go like, I need to talk with Joker because I am in the abyss as well, and this is going to happen with the Jokers. So again, it's like that's me trying to make sense of kind of like what is going on with this story, and how does that relate to the Killing Joke? It's not an easy transition. You know what I mean? And so, but again, that's what I was trying to build, because to me, I'm kind of like, okay, this is kind of weird. This is kind of, these things happen. And like, what kind of like focus do I put on it? Right. And so I try to focus it on, again, it's the abyss that she's falling into, and she's losing control to the point where she's like, I'm in the abyss right now. I'm going to murder these people, this person,
makes sense.
And I need to stop.
I like that. Hey, Nick, do you have any questions you want to ask?
All right, thank you. So, when I was looking through your IMDb, I saw that you worked on Justice League versus Teen Titans.
Yeah.
And so first off, I love that movie. Thank you.
Me too.
But
those were so fun. I loved working on the Teen Titans.
Yeah, I'm a huge Teen Titans fan myself. But there's kind of a very particular scene I gotta ask you about.
Okay.
The suit up scene. Okay. Now, I'm a big Tokusatsu fan. All right. And to my eyes, the suit up scene seemed to be like a send up of like Starfire to me looks very clearly Sailor Moon.
Right.
And like the other ones kind of seem very Power Rangers, Super Sentai, Kamen Rider-ish. Was that intentional? And if so, what were the other ones intended to be based off, if I'm correct?
I don't think we were that specific, but the general part of what you're saying is what it is, right? Because and this is from James, right? And that's why he had sort of those sort of CW type sort of music montages through them,
Yeah.
There was one in that, and there was one in one or a couple in Judas Contract as well. Because he really wanted the feel of that to be almost like a teen drama kind of a thing. Do you know what I mean?
And it worked. He did it. He accomplished it. Bravo.
Yeah. And the person that boarded those is great. He passed away, but his name is Will Ruzica. He was actually the director, I think, on the Invincible, the 7th episode, the one with the train.
Really?
How crazy that was. Yeah. He's really good.
I can't imagine how he'd feel if he saw the Omni-Man trailer for Mortal Kombat and see they actually had that as a fatality. Like, I imagine he would be so thrilled to see that.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about Justice League versus Teen Titans, I gotta say my favorite scene is when Superman is fighting the demonically possessed Flash, and he goes, "Barry, if you can hear me, I'm sorry, I gotta do this." He just crushes his ankle, and then Flash is like, "Seriously?"
Yeah.
Because I think what I like about that is that I liked how the Justice League felt like a family and kind of like an older Teen Titans kind of like that kind of I like the team dynamic we started to get at that point in the universe.
Yeah.
Whose call was it for like? I really like the adorable characterization you had between Dick and Corey, like her, like, oh, he's very athletic. Usually, like right now, I admire your boldness. Like the
innuendo was so good.
Yeah,
it's right on the line. It is right on the line.
Yeah, again, that's part of the whole teen sort of thing, right? So like that whole sexuality thing, and so again, like those are
like you're wearing the
Starfire though, because she's a very sexual character, so it made sense. So I was like, there you go.
But
I
also at the same time, you did it in a very tasteful manner.
Yeah, exactly.
I do want to like, yes, she was sexual. She made like sexual comments. She was very attractive and whatnot, but you did it in a tasteful manner to where it wasn't overt. I didn't think it was objectifying. I just thought it was kind of her personality. And it was, like I said, it was done in a very classy manner.
Yeah, we tried to make it look awkward, and so, I don't know. I always think that those things are really, I don't know, again, kind of cute in a way, right?
You really gave Richard the blues. I'm trying censoring my language for Jared, but
Thank you.
it's
But,
like that was a running joke of having Grayson giving the blues.
yeah. So Teladia, the other co-host of Comedy, for first off, is a huge fan, and he wanted to ask, what was it like working with Kevin Conroy? Because I saw like because he voiced Batman and like a lot of the stuff that you did, particularly like the Killing Joke, and then JL versus the Fatal Five. I believe you worked on that with that.
Yeah, and also even my first one that I did which was Public Enemies, right?
Oh, of course, yeah. By the way, I just recently watched that one. So good.
Yeah. You know, Kevin obviously, you know, by that time or whatever, had sort of become sort of, you know, the icon, right? And so the times that I would see him obviously is when we were quote unquote on, right? It's because again, we would be at these conventions and we'd be having to do these interviews. And the only sort of times that we, you know what I mean, are kind of a little bit more relaxed is kind of like, you know, when we're having dinner or something like that, right? Because a lot of times we'll do these like presentations and stuff like that, right? We'll do the showing and then we'll have a panel or whatever. And then, you know, there's usually like a big dinner that kind of happens afterwards, right? That's on Warner Brothers. And I miss those days because it's not like that anymore, right? But he has always been, I feel like, just very gracious, especially to the fans, right? And so he really, I think, enjoyed what he did, you know, and he was very proud of it in a way.
Yeah.
You know? He would tell stories, you know what I mean, of, you know, him being in like, I don't know, there's this one story about him, you know, helping out in a soup kitchen and stuff like that. And then I think
the 9/11 story. I love that story.
Yeah. And so, but again, he really is genuinely that, you know, I think very appreciative of what it was. And so I think he really loved going to conventions and stuff like that. So, yeah, just a really, you know, those are the only times I saw him because we weren't like friends or anything like that. Right? So,
but I will say the thing that I love about acting in general, whether or not it's live action or like voice acting or something like that, is that in a way you attain a form of immortality because everyone's gonna see Kevin Conroy as Batman. Like it's never not gonna happen. And like sometimes when I'm reading the comics, he's the head I have. He's the voice in my head.
Like Casey Kasem is still thought of when it comes to Shaggy. Like Casey Kasem's been dead for like 10, 20 years or so. He hasn't voiced Shaggy in probably 30 years. Yet people still think of him when it comes to Shaggy.
Yeah.
Now, the other questions that Teladia had was like, so what was in going from like, say that from like it's more from like an art perspective. How does the art, I think what he's asking here is like, what was like the different like style from like an art approach that you had from like the DC 52 movies to like a movie like Superman Doomsday or like Doom that came.
Someone said Super Sons.
Yeah, what's up, Tavia? How you doing?
Oh my God, he did not waste any time.
Yeah.
You know, because I think as you know, when you're working with story and you're working with like storyboard artists mostly, right? That's as a director that's your primary job, right? Is to sort of direct, you know, what the shots are, what's happening within the scenes, you know, what the movement, action, and all that kind of stuff is, right? And the sort of pace of it. So as far as like the art is concerned, it's sort of, you know, it's really functional, right? It's just kind of like, what are the limitations of it? You know, hopefully you design in a way where it looks good, you know, while standing still, but also in motion kind of a thing, right? So yeah, I don't really have a great sort of in-depth answer for that. And I think again, like, you know, when you're the producer, like I was the main producer on Doom That Came to Gotham, I'm a lot more sort of in on the art of it, right? But when you're a director or whatever, that's the sort of decision making that comes from the producer.
Now, speaking of like on Public Enemies, one of the things I loved about like that and Apocalypse specifically was that you recreated the art style from the actual comic as well. So it felt like you were like watching like essentially a motion comic, except obviously animated. So I always felt that like it's really cool when you're able to like recreate to as close as possible, recreate the art style from the actual book.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I bet.
And it, again, it's the industry is difficult, right? And I wonder with like actors, right? Because again, like sometimes I'll do like, I remember going in to do like some sort of radio sort of interview, and there were other actors there and stuff like that, right? And they're like, hey, do you want to go like hang out after, or like go get lunch or whatever? I mean, I was like, I got to go back to work. You know what I mean? So I feel like a lot of us as artists, not that they're not artists, but as far as like drawing and all that kind of stuff, right? We have more of a 9 to 5 kind of thing, right? It's not like we work and then we sort of wait, and we have like days off or something like that. You know what I mean? Outside of the weekends, obviously. So a lot of the times the marathon element of like pace and sort of like, how do you sort of not burn out and become absolutely useless for a week? It's hard, right? Especially during that time that I was directing the director videos. I was putting out like 3 movies a year, right? And so the burnout, I was so close to burning out. That's why I didn't direct the ends of it, like the Apocalypse thing, the Justice League Dark, Apocalypse, the one that ends basically that 52 run, right? Because I was just so fried, and even like Hush, I was like, there's so many characters in this. I was just like,
yeah.
Like I need help because my brain is so fried at this point,
I bet.
So, I mean, again, like all this stuff is kind of great, but again, we're, I hate to say it, but we're kind of a sausage factory. Do you know what I mean? It's like, we have to keep pumping it out. And as creatives, is like, you need to have something in the tank in order to sort of come up with something at least solid, if not sort of new, And so it's hard. It's a rough marathon,
Yeah, I bet it's and so Tevia asks, he wants to know, are you involved in the Crisis on Infinite Earths movie, and if so, any hints on what the plans are for that movie?
I'm not. The Butchverse, or whatever you want to call it, like Butch is the the one that's sort of heading the last. I think there's 10 of them total, or there's going to be 10 when it's all said and done. Like they're the team that replaced the James Tucker team.
Oh, okay.
And so I'm not part of that. I've helped out on some of the earlier stuff, but I don't know what they're doing. So yeah, cool. I have no idea.
So my question, going to like the doom that came to Gotham. Now, what I really want to start with is essentially, so how did like that project like get like proposed, like, hey, we're gonna adapt this story? What was like the whole process behind that?
So I'm kind of, I think, by the end of the whole, the James Tucker thing, right? I was so burnt out, right? And I was like, I just want to work on stuff that I want to do, right? And so Death, when that came up or whatever, I was just like, I'm just going to do the thing that I like, right? Or that's really interesting to me now, right? And I'm just like, I know it's going to be difficult because, again, this is not popular right now. There's no fighting in it. It's all drama, and I gotta. And what am I going to do to sort of hopefully attempt to hold people's attention, right? And so when, again, I didn't really have anything to do. I was talking to Jim Krieg, who's sort of like the head writer, right? He's the guy that sort of wrangles all the stuff, and he hires writers or pairs up with writers, and and sort of make sure that everything kind of goes right. And so we were kind of talking, and I was just like, I've been playing this video game that I really love, which is called Bloodborne, right? And it's I would love to do like a Bloodborne type story, right? Like a kind of a gothic, almost like a horror type of thing, right? And he recommended Batman the New Became Gotham. It's like, hey, have you read that? I think Bruce had brought that up as one time too. I think when we were working on, Gotham by Gaslight, right? Because they're sort of you know, sort of by the same creator. Mike Mignola was involved in both of them and to different capacities. And they're both sort of in the past Elseworld stories. And so I was like, no, I've never read it. And he was just like, oh, maybe you should take a look at that. And so when I read it, I was just like, wow, like I think there's something we can do with this, right? And so I knew, again, in my mind, because all the meetings that we kind of go to, right, it's always, it's not just us, right? It's at the time anyways, it's different now with the business models, you know, since it's bought out by Discovery, right? So I don't even know what it is right now. But before it was us as creatives, DC, and home video, right? Because DC, Warner Brothers Home Video is the people that basically put up the money for these to get made. So it's kind of a meeting to see like, okay, what are we going to do and what can we agree on? And so, you know, it's always, again, the things that are big hitters, right? Even Killing Joke, like, even though I think as an audience, people knew it was controversial, right?
Yeah.
But to sort of people that are not in comics, they just know that Killing Joke keeps coming up. So that's a big one because everybody keeps talking about Killing Joke, right? So that's why it hasn't been made for almost like 20 years. It's been on the table since the beginning, right? But I think as creators, we all knew that, I don't know, this is a pretty controversial piece and I don't know what we're going to do with it, you know? And so, but again, it just eventually got pushed on people, right? And so Doom Became Gotham, I was like, this isn't the typical thing that I know that like the soccer moms and everybody's going to want to get. The majority of Batman.
Hey, Mom, I have a fantastic Batman story for you right now.
And also the majority of Batman fans.
That girl's in an insane asylum and in a wheelchair. You love it.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So this was purely just what I was interested in, right? And I was shocked when they were like, oh, they picked this. I was like, really? Because I wouldn't have made it if I didn't think that there was something there. Right?
Yeah.
Because I'm a story guy as well, right? It's got to wrap around. It's Lovecraftian, but Lovecraft stories have a tendency to basically, it's about spectacle, and basically everybody just dies or goes insane, right? There's no coming back from that, right? But I felt
Do
like
not look into the eyes of Cthulhu. Yes, you go insane.
Yeah. So I felt like this story actually had a little bit of a human story, even underneath all this basically Lovecraftian, you know, demise and, you know, nihilism, right? Because Batman still lives, he's transformed.
Lives, yeah, exactly.
Right. But I think there's a very human thing to it, right? Because it's the overwhelming destruction that he's facing, and even though he's not unscathed, he's out of it, and with his integrity intact, right? He's the defender of Gotham. Yeah. And now he's something else, but he's still defending Gotham, kind of a thing, right? So I think that I always felt like there was something, you know, because again, I was kind of an emo kid, you know, and like, you know, the whole Poe, you know, and like Frankenstein, those stories always stuck with me. You know, like Wuthering Heights and these almost like horror tragedies, you know, and I kind of felt like this really had a feeling of that at its core, you know, and especially I think just that image of, you know, the Bat creature in the Belfry, he becomes the monster in the bell tower. I was just, that guy is so gothic, you know, like.
And I love that moment when you save the "I'm Batman" to when he's actually a Batman. Yeah. That is one of my favorite parts about the movie. But the other thing I like about the movie,
Man Bat.
Yes, it's a Batman. He's basically becomes Man Bat. But one of the things that I love when I was watching the movie for the first time, I think I said this in the previous live stream I did. I like how many Bat family members actually show up if you're paying attention. Same thing in like Gotham by Gaslight, because it's like when the Robin kids are showing up, and I'm like, okay, I know who all three of you are. But it's like it took me a second when I was watching Doom That Came to Gotham. Oh yeah, you fit Cassandra Cain in this one, so I was like, oh, okay, I got it. But that's always fun for me because it's kind of like a little Easter egg hunt for me.
Yeah. And you know, a lot of it obviously is it starts from Richard Pace and Mike Mignola, right? Like they had that in their graphic novel,
Mhm.
We just sort of changed certain things up a little bit, which to me made sense, you
Yeah.
know, and also just having them kind of the kids show up again, as zombies basically. I just kind of feel like that was, I think, I don't know if Jim thought of that or Jace. Jace is
Mhm.
the writer on it, right?
Mhm.
That basically wrote everything.
Mhm.
But I thought it was brilliant. Again, there's just the human. It's another thorn in Batman's thing.
Yeah.
Like I have to kill my sons again, kind of a thing.
Yeah, that has got to be. But the other thing that I really like about that, when you think about it, it plays off that role of he basically becomes Batman, but without the Bruce Wayne part, because that's always the struggle with Batman. Is like, how do I balance being Bruce Wayne and Batman? Well, now I don't have to because I'm literally a Batman. And Britt asks, what was going back to the 52 real quick, what was the decision process of ending the Tucker verse with the Justice League being so brutal and R-rated? Like Wonder Woman's arm is torn off in that movie.
Yeah. I think that decision, the change, again, this is super candid. And I'm horrible at videos because I can't.
It's all good. It's all good.
Filter is so low sometimes, but I think we were kind of surprised that we were notified that, okay, this universe is going to be done. I remember we were at an edit, and I think he got the news and he told me, and I was just like, wow, it would have been nice if we had, we wanted, James specifically, but we wanted to do one more Teen Titans movie, one more Suicide Squad movie, and I think one more Dark movie, right? And so he was working on the Dark movie, and it was totally different. But when we got the news that this is the last one, it's going to be done, he's just like, okay, this has to be a different story now. So throw the script in the fire. This has to be a wrap up story. And so I don't know. I don't want to speak for him, but I kind of feel like he had a little bit of a bitterness in him.
Yeah. It was interesting interesting that ending, and it ends with Flashpoint again. So it's it's like a good. To me, it actually ended really well. I mean, and also I'm a sucker for badass Superman fight scenes, and when he shows up fully powered and beats the crap out of Darkseid, I was like, okay, this is dope, because I feel like a lot of times he doesn't get a lot of good moments, whether it's in the live action movies, where he really goes full on nuts, because again, in that scene, Lois was just killed, and if you take out Lois, Superman's I don't agree with the whole he turns into an evil dictator, but he will get pissed.
Well, the thing about Superman Darkseid is Darkseid can take it now, can't he?
Yes, exactly, with the whole world of cardboard speech. But let me ask you this: so going off of the Doom That Came to Gotham being an Elseworld story, are there any other DC Elseworld stories that you would have liked to also adapt as an animated movie?
I and this is more of just my, I guess, relationship with Jim DeMatteis, is because I haven't read it yet. Again, I haven't read a comic book in over 20 years at least, but I know he wrote Speeding Bullets, and
yes,
I loved one, and so I've always wanted to take a look at that.
That would be cool. I would so watch that. My favorite's either that one or the one where Batman becomes a Green Lantern.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, either one of those would have been great. So Tavi is asking about the DC storyline. So that's basically DC's zombies storyline, where we're essentially, you know how Darkseid is always looking for the anti-life equation.
Oh yeah.
Essentially, he finds it, but it turns everyone into zombies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of that could work as anime stories, but I would love the Speeding Bullets part a lot more, because you could play off of because the thing about Speeding Bullets, well, the weird thing about Speeding Bullets is how, okay, Superman being Batman, also then, okay, Lex Luthor becomes the Joker, Lois Lane is Vicky, everything else merges. But it would be because what that story I think does well is it shows the dichotomy, if you will, between Batman and Superman. So I think that could have been really cool to see as an animated movie.
I agree.
And I just love working with JM, right? Because I think he's like a character writer. You know,
Yeah.
his stories have like really good. Because again, when the Death, you know, that project for Death came up, right? I hadn't worked with JM before, but I knew him from comics when I was younger, right? And I was talking to James Tucker about it, and he was like, oh, you know, they keep bringing up Death. Maybe you should put your, you know, just throw your hat in the ring. And I was like, wow, though, like, who's going to write it? Because Neil Gaiman writes in such a very specific kind of way that's not really what it's. There's poetry to it, right? It's like sophisticated poetry. And I was like, I don't know if most of the writers that we use are that, right? They're kind of like our brand. Like they just do they do like good epic moments and fights and stuff like that. But he was like, what about JM? And I was just like, oh, is he available? I was just like, oh, I would totally do it if JM could do it, you know? And so, yeah, I just love his work, you know? So, yeah, anyways, you know, we talked about it in hopes of doing it and stuff like that, but who knows? Who knows what, you know, the company wants to do with these, if we're going to continue or not, you know? You know, if I'm back in the thing, like that's definitely something that I'd like to do down the road.
Yeah, I could see that. That'd be fun. Hey, Nick, do you have any more questions you want to ask?
Oh, yes, I certainly do. So one of the movies I kind of also want to ask you about was Batman Soul of the Dragon. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So personally, just to at the bat, I do like this movie. But it kind of just seems like you advertise it as a Batman movie, but it seems like it's more of like a Richard Dragon movie. Like, for example, Bruce only suits up as Batman in literally 2 scenes. So like, what was about that? Like, were you intending to do a Richard Dragon movie? Was Warner Bros. Like, oh, you got to have this be Batman because like we got to put Batman on the cover? Like, what was about that? Can you kind of shed some light on it?
I mean, you pretty much hit it, you know. Well, at first I'll have to say this is a Bruce Timm story through and through, right? Bruce has this love affair with the 70s. I think the 70s was, I think, a good time in his life, maybe, because he always seems to go back there, right? And so, I don't know. This is behind the scenes sort of stuff. But I think Bruce always wanted it to be. It's not really about Batman, right? It's about, and because I remember when we were talking about the story, he was saying basically, Richard Dragon's not a sidekick. He should never feel like a sidekick. And so again, you know, I'm forgetting words right now for some reason. It's been a long day.
It's all good.
Yeah.
Subversively, whatever it is, supposed to be like a Richard Dragon.
Yeah. Personally, I think the movie would have been better off just not having Batman in there at all and having it to be a pure Richard Dragon movie. Because honestly, in this movie, Batman feels like the sidekick in it. Like I said, I do like this movie. I'm not criticizing it. I like this movie. I just wish it didn't have Batman in it at all and just be Richard.
But again,
Dragon.
it's like what you said. It's the marketing angle, blah blah blah. You know, I mean, the Dark movies. Do they really have, like, the first one? Does that really have to have Batman in it? You know.
No, it's like a lot of the storylines DC does now. They have to have like the Batman in there because otherwise it's like no one's gonna buy, like, say, a Dead Man comic nowadays. But they're like, I'll buy it if Batman's in it.
Yeah.
But like Batman shows up for 2 panels, says hi.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I feel like, you know, even though Bruce / Batman wasn't the main character in Soul of the Dragon, I felt like he fit in there purposefully. You know, he was just one of the 4, and he got arguably equal screen time to one of the 4, and he was just, you know, one of the 4 people that made up that group. And so,
I mean, the fact that you're also able to fit in Bronze Tiger and have him voiced by Michael Jai White, who, by the way, that's like, I don't know if you knew this, but like, Michael Jai White was Bronze Tiger in the Arrowverse.
Yeah,
so this is probably the second time he played Bronze Tiger.
Yeah.
So like, I love that kind of little trivia.
Yeah, and they're all, you know, we were able to get, you know, the action movie stars, right, from the 90s to 2000s, right? Like Kelly Hu, she was kind of an action star, and
Lady Deathstrike.
Yeah. And Mark Dacascos, he was Crow in one
Literally
thing. He
everything.
was in,
I mean, he's literally in everything. So
yeah, he had his own movies, and I still haven't seen this one, but there was one. It was something with wolves, something about wolves. It was, I think, a French movie, and he played like an Indian. And it was some sort of mystical kind of thing. But again, they wore these outfits that are just, I think that's where Bloodborne got those outfits from. I can't believe I forgot the name of the movie now. But anyways, Mark Dacascos, I'm a big fan of, and he's the nicest guy.
he's amazing. He is amazing.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw, he was in John Wick 3.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
Zero. He did such a great job as like
Yeah.
the John Wick fanboy. I love him in anything he does.
Yeah. He's like sunshine. He's like the nicest, most positive guy.
Now, Andrew has a really good question. He says, I think Batman kind of lost his like detective mojo in Dark Avenger of Gotham. And it's like, what's your opinion on like how the movies tend to like steer away from the detective part? I mean, except
God,
for like
basically.
probably, except for probably the Matt Reeves movies.
Oh, what is the Dark Avenger? Is that a movie, or what is the?
No, I think he's like giving like a title of Batman, but what Andrew's saying is like, what do you think of like Batman losing about like DC not exactly highlighting Batman's like detective skills?
Oh, he's become more of a Dark Avenger than a detective, right?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't even want to like second guess like what happens with the movie kind of thing, because obviously it depends on sort of who's in the room, right? Whether it's the creatives that are leading the projects, or if it's business people that are, and it's I don't have a huge amount of faith in, I'm not saying all of them, but I've kind of run into quite a few development people that are just like, oh, you don't even get what makes this property cool, kind of a thing, and they're kind of going to, what do you call it? Focus testing, what they feel like people want versus what this is, it's just like, well, that's the wrong character for that. Like, if you want it like that, why don't you just use this character instead of taking this character and trying to fit it into this other thing?
True.
All that kind of stuff is, it's a funny, the business side of it is kind of funny, especially when you're sort of a creative and you're kind of looking at like, why are these decisions being made?
Well, on that, it's Brown Destroyer asks, in terms of this, do you think that that WB doesn't promote their DC animated movies enough in other streaming services so that it reaches a larger audience?
Absolutely. Even just talking to the PR guy that we I've worked with for so long, that's a battle, right? Because again, there are certain things that they're difficult to quantify, right? Like art, especially being one, right? It's kind of like why is this artist worth this much money? Because it's just art, or it's just this or whatever, right? And so even understanding the nuance of what actually makes that artist better than these other artists, it's a difficult thing to sort of convince some certain people about, right? So it's things like marketing again sometimes, especially on, because the superhero market is considered a niche market, right? And so I feel like unless you have a blockbuster franchise, like Marvel did or does still, I suppose, you can't convince money people because you need an example for it, right? So again, we make good enough money, but we're not making amazing money, right? Because I think a lot of times, when people when Gods and Monsters came out, right? There's a lot of people that really liked it, and they're like, hey, oh, we want more, we want whatever, right? And our response is always, then buy it. Because again, you have to prove to the money people that it's going to make money. Because if it doesn't make money, they're not going to invest in it again. We do enough work where it sort of justifies like, okay, you make enough money to keep doing what you're doing, but they're constantly trying to like find another blockbuster thing because again, it's got to be a lot of money. They got to make their investment needs to, be like
shown
for sure things.
They have to have a return on the investment. So now,
so basically
sorry.
so basically if I were to sum this up, you guys do well enough to kind of keep the status quo.
Yeah.
But in terms of like upping the quality, upping whatever, like you don't make enough money to go to the next level of this kind of thing.
It's a weird double-edged sword also, right? Because on one hand also because on our streaming services, right? Like on the HBO Max or whatever, I'm going off of like I have no idea what it is now, but going off of like a year ago, right? One of our movies from the DTV superhero line, right, is always in one of the top 10 streaming things on Max, right? Next to these blockbuster movies that are like over $100 million, over 5 years to make, whatever, or around 5 years to make. Yet again, we make like, one, whatever it is, 30th of it. We have a fifth of the time to do it. I feel like their whole thing is like, well, hey, look, like we only had to pay this much money and we're still getting this. So instead of like, hey, let's try to put more money into it and make things better, it's just like, let's keep doing that because we're coming out on top. Do you know what I mean? So
that makes sense.
It's a weird thing because it basically proves that we can do it cheap, and they're like, just keep doing it then.
So like if you don't succeed,
then
you're screwed. But if you do succeed, you're still screwed.
Right, because they're not going to invest more money in it. That just means that you still have a job.
And then like let's say even God forbid you do convince them to invest more money into it as an experiment. You better hope that experiment blows it out of the water, because even if it does like normal numbers, they're like, oh, why are we investing this money? We're just going to get the same returns when there's a million reasons why that one property did or did not do well.
Right. Yeah, yeah. It's like it's like an analysis all the time, right? In a very sort of like numbers kind of way.
That's very fascinating, though. So, on sort of that note of like money and return on investments, okay, I gotta ask this. I'm wearing the hoodie. All right, so as a directing creator that has delved in these characters a lot, you know what I'm gonna ask. So what is like your opinions on like the Zack Snyder DC movies and like how that whole situation was handled?
Yeesh. Yeah. I mean, I'm
just a loaded question, Jared.
You're among friends, Sam. It's all good. It's all good.
No, I mean, I think that's the. It's sad in a way, right? Because I think that's just. I look at it and I just think like, okay, that's just how the game happens. That's just what happens in the game, right? And it's not just Zach. I feel like there's plenty of other directors, right? You get a little bit of hype. You're proving that, hey, you're the guy, and we're gonna like gamble on you, and all the spotlights are on you. And if you don't continuously over excel, then you've dimmed. Even if you do okay, you gotta spike. If you're not like spiking all the time, whatever, you're considered your stock diminishes, and to the point where like they don't care about you anymore. Because they're looking for basically supernovas all the time. People that can consistently supernova, right? And so it's difficult because I think I don't know. This is my interpretation of the business, right? It's kind of like they're not going to give you time to sort of find your footing. It's like you gotta knock it out of the park every single time.
Yeah.
And once you don't, whatever, they're going to consider canceling you or limiting.
Yeah, that's kind of where like an old versus new kind of thing came in, because like let's say even cartoons or TV, like you do one season, you had 22 episodes to find your footing.
Yeah.
Like there's this kind of phrase in old TV of finding your stride. and
Right.
you kind of like the first like 6 or so episodes, it was okay to be fumbling around. Like you were
Right.
kind of expected to find your stride like by episode 6 or 7, you know, or whatever, or earlier.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
you had that kind of built in. Now 6 episodes in, season's over, you know, like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And everything is now like short stuff, it's immediate. So it's like you said, people don't have the time to find themselves, make a few mistakes. It's like they gotta be like the best thing ever, or it's on to the next guy.
And I feel like fandoms, like
Mhm.
just how it's become,
Yeah.
it doesn't help. You know, I mean, you're shooting yourself in the foot because everybody wants to be critical. Everybody wants to like have the hot take. Everybody wants to sort of like be the like I'm the most insightful person in the room and just like I know why this is wrong or like this is
Mhm.
wrong because I'm smarter than everybody else or whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, that's not always the case, but
Yeah.
to lean that way is to basically tank things, right? Which
Mhm.
basically
I don't know.
tells the business people like we're going to cancel this thing.
It's like I don't know how many YouTube videos I saw after BVS, like, oh, let's rewrite Batman versus Superman. Let's rewrite that scene. You know, like
Mhm.
it's like every other YouTuber was like, let's
Right.
rewrite it. It's like they knew better. Like
Right.
they knew how to write better than $1 million screenwriters. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert, they don't.
And the funny part is that when you watch those same channels now, like when they react to like say the Snyder Cut or anything like that, they're like, "Oh my gosh, we want more." And to your point later, then you should have actually shown up. That's the
Right.
thing.
Or
Right. Yeah.
like those same people that go and do fan films of
Yeah,
these
it's like you
characters.
burn it down in the beginning and then you miss it after it's gone. And you're
Yeah,
like,
it's like
I mean,
there's this
you-
fan.
sorry, go ahead, Jared.
Yeah, there's this fantastic moment in the DC documentary Superpower where they're talking about the decision making around like the decision to kill Superman in the 90s. And Mike Carlin goes, "Okay, so I had people coming up to me saying, 'How could you kill Superman?'" And then he goes, "When was the last time you bought a Superman comic?" And then they go, "Oh yeah, a couple years ago." And he goes, I didn't kill Superman. You did.
right.
If you're not gonna water the plants, they're gonna die."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that reminds me of like when Saturday morning cartoons went away. Everyone's like, "Oh, why are Saturday morning cartoons going away?" It's like, when was the last time you watched Saturday morning cartoon? 13 years ago, 15 years ago, 20. Like these people hadn't watched Saturday morning cartoons in literally decades, and they're mourning, and it just always kind of struck me as odd.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult working in the business because again, there's and again, like before, I felt like the fandom was the thing that would sort of save you or help save you, but it's become just one more obstacle, you know, I think as a creative because again, like sometimes there's movies, right? And that's why there's like these cries for like we want the whatever Snyder cut, we want the you know whatever whoever's cut, right?
Schumacher cut.
Yeah, because you're dealing with execs too that are basically trying to hamstring you as well.
Yeah,
know?
that's true.
And you know, I mean, I know just even within our small kind of thing, right? It's like as a director, once you're done with something, the producer takes over, you know what I mean? Or somebody else takes over, or you get notes from basically the upper people, and then there's certain things that they just want to cut, and you have to do it, and you're like, that just destroys the whole point of this movie, you know, or the scene, or like, and you just got to do it
because like, oh, we need to hit this arbitrary runtime number for whatever reason.
Yeah, again, like the Doom that came to Gotham, right? I had to cut 30 minutes out of this thing. You know, I mean, I wanted time to actually use horror tropes by using like sound design and like slow push-ins and the music and the tension and the grating sounds. But there's so much story also. You just got to go because again, it's like, because this is important. They need to know this information. So very early on in the thing, it was just like, okay, this is not going to have that horror element anymore because there's no time for it. You know, because we
the other. But the other thing I always tell people, speaking of fandom, is that when I'm talking to my fellow comic book people and they're weighing in on like this take or like why this movie didn't go well, I always tell people, we can't approach it like comic book fans, because otherwise we're going to see everything as like evergreen, everything's awesome. We have to approach this as the general audience member, because that's what ultimately what, at least from my perspective, the studios are shooting for. Because yes, it's great to have the fans on board, but really the general audience is what pushes these movies like over that ginormous amount of money.
Right. And we serve a different thing also, right? Because again, we work at basically, we're not working in an indie shop, right? We're working in basically a big thing that wants to hit the majority of the market. You want to hit 80% or whatever of the population. You got to be palatable for them, right? So there's a lot of people, I mean, even when the Death Thing short came out, right? There's a lot of sort of, oh, I'm a Neil Gaiman aficionado. This is nothing like, Death. But I'm making it for me, but I'm also making it for like, this is your introduction to a character and you got to understand her.
Yeah, exactly.
She's not going to be so odd or so like, what she's going to say is so obscure that you have to like have some sort of like literary reference for it, in order for you to get it. Because not everybody, again, we're trying to hit a higher percentage, right? And so, because even when I remember when I was, pitching stories for Death, right? I had 2 pitches. I was like, I have the emo, very personal artist story, which thank God for Bruce, because Bruce championed this, which is what it is. But I had another story, which is like, you're following a hitman, because I was just like, our audience wants action. And so instead of this story about this artist dying, it's about like how do I infuse action into it? And so it was like, you're following a hitman who's basically bleeding out, and he runs into this girl, as he's dying, kind of a thing. And then it becomes, so again, it's kind of like, I understand, because even this June That Came to Gotham, there's like these Lovecraftian sort of like deep aficionados or whatever. That's just like, okay, it's not, like, I've heard quite a few people go like, you don't understand cosmic horror at all, and I'm just like, it's cosmic horror enough. But again, I understand it's not hard cosmic horror, because again, I still have to keep in mind that like it's even a stretch for like the soccer moms to like, but it's there. Do you know what I mean? Because if I went total Lovecraft, there's no point to it. You're just going to be like, there's no even chance that you're going to like this, So
plus also it's Batman, so you're not going 100% Lovecraft.
Right.
Yeah, and as much as we like to pretend like, oh, these are for the fans, and maybe they are to a degree, you got to realize the vast majority of people that are watching this, aka the people that are giving you the money, are like, Karen is flipping through HBO Max, like looking for something for their son to watch.
Yeah,
and you got to have a certain amount of appeal for them, or else they're just not going to watch it, or even worse, they complain.
Here, Tommy, you're gonna watch a Lovecraftian horror Batman story. So I got 2 more questions for you from the audience. So Brown asked, how do you think the MCU's success put extra expectations on the DC movies early on, and the extent to which you think this helped create the whole movie mess? You kind of touched on this, and the whole you have to constantly perform and then overperform. But if there's anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you look at Marvel movies, obviously pre-Feige, pre-Iron Man, right? They're kind of similar to what DC has done, and I think that's just how, like, this is just my opinion, right? Of how the studios basically operate, right? It's like they're gonna take the idea, and everybody's gonna have their ideas, and you got to input all this stuff or whatever, and you got to have, again, like, oh, it should be more family, oh, it should be whatever, it shouldn't be so dark or whatever, and then you just have to do whatever. It becomes this Frankenstein monster of, it's kind of dark, but it's really family, or it's not dark enough, or it's not family enough, whatever, right? And you sort of lose focus in what you're actually trying to be. It's not a pure, thing. But again, some writers also, or some whatever creators are just like, I'm here to make popcorn movies, and so I'm not trying to do some sort of deep dark whatever, right? But I think like, I think everybody knows this story, right? Because like, Marvel was kind of on its last legs, right? They were like going into bankruptcy, right? When they Iron Man. Iron Man was a Hail Mary for them, right? They were
Yeah.
like, we're gonna like try out the movie industry, and we're just gonna like go for it, right? They became such a hit. Disney decided like we're gonna buy them,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
I think with Feige, they had a plan of that we're gonna commit to this thing where we're gonna like, and I think it was probably more of a long-term marketing plan for them, right? Because even in the animation side, because I worked on like things like Planet Hulk, Hulk versus,
Mhm.
and that young Thor.
Also awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank you. With Marvel, right? And their deal with Lionsgate was to basically make these animated things that I assume is to pitch to be sold as movies. Because again, like remember during like the in-between periods, right? Like Rocket Raccoon kept coming up, and I'm just like, this is pre-Guardians, right? I was like, why Rocket Raccoon? Who knows who Rocket Raccoon is?
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, out of all the heroes, you're gonna pick Rocket Raccoon. You were gonna make a Rocket Raccoon movie, you know? And I'm like, why are you guys leaning on Hulk so much? There's so many Hulk movies. But again, it's just to pitch, right? We did a Doctor Strange one, you know. We did the Planet Hulk thing. What were some of the other ones? You know, just typical like Thor, Avengers, Iron Man type stuff, right?
I mean, like were you involved with like the Ultimate Avengers 1 and 2?
I was not. I got there after that. I got there when I think my first one was Iron Man, and then it was Doctor Strange, and then but I was storyboarding at the time, and then yeah, I got on to direct on part of Hulk versus, and then the Thor: Son of Asgard, and then Planet Hulk, and I directed those 2.5, I guess, 2.5. But those were all sort of to pitch, right? I remember again when we were working on Iron Man, Jon Favreau was shooting the movie at the time, and he actually came to our screening when we actually got, you know, the product all made, and he was saying basically that he was watching a movie on his laptop as he was shooting his film. Even when we were doing development, Marvel wanted us to basically send him with that department all our development stuff. Like the Mark I armor is very, very close to basically our Mark I armor.
I noticed that. Yeah, it is.
I mean, I'd never seen him with the square eyes. Then Frank did that. I was just like, what is that? It looks weird. But then it shows up in the movie, right? The asymmetrical arm thing. You know, again, like that's not from Sons of Origins or the old, you know, 1960s Iron Man or whatever it was.
No, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, I was just like, man, they took a lot of this from Frank, you know. So I feel like when they did Iron Man, they were like, okay, we're going to build up these characters so we can like, you know, spotlight them a little bit, and then maybe we can start making some money, kind of a thing, right? I'm assuming, but they had a plan they stuck with, right? Because again, they were at a point where they were a Hail Mary thing. This isn't just one of the projects. This is their only project, right? So they had basically a plan for all of this. And when Disney bought them, I'm assuming, again, just let him execute and just continue basically the plan, like Feige, right? But if you're at Warner Brothers, or like, again, like before when, you know, like the Ben Affleck Daredevils and the, you know, the old Marvel movies, right?
Yeah.
They're kind of one and done things. Again, like, but that's traditionally how big studios kind of work.
Yeah. So, so our last question of the night, and then we'll let you go, is to end it on a more positive note. What was the most fun animated piece you did, and why?
Well, just again in the most recent stuff, right?
Yeah.
I feel like we brought them all up, right? Like Death was my most fulfilling, like on a personal level. The two Teen Titans movies was super fun to work on. Soul of the Dragon was super fun to work on. And the Doom That Came to Gotham, I had really high hopes for what it is, and I feel like it's like 70% there, but I have a lot of like regret and PTSD from that production. And I just wish that, I could have made it. I had a little more time and screen time space. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I feel like everything from the music to the sound effects, again, to the cut of the picture, everything was just a nightmare.
Mhm.
Just I don't want to say it's like things that I felt like I was promised but I didn't get,
Mhm.
but everything was cut really really short, and so just it was a very sad way to end the whole thing. I feel like it holds together pretty well, but again,
It does.
it especially Act Two, we just had to slam through that,
Mhm.
because we just had no screen time. It's just like you got to cut 10 minutes. I'm like, I can't cut it out at the beginning because I feel like you got to ease into it. You got to like
Yeah.
put people into the world. The end, you got to like that's when you got to make them feel everything. So the sacrifice was the stuff in the middle, which again, like the plague and all that kind of stuff, need more time.
Yeah, because it does kind of blow right through that part of the story. I mean, it's fine from an audience perspective, but yeah, not that you mentioned it would have been kind of cool, like expand on that part.
Yeah, just to let it breathe and let people to kind
Yeah.
of like think about like, oh, what just happened, and let me add the pieces up before you move on. It's just like now it's just like, okay, this happened, you get that? Oh, then this is part of his history, you got that? Oh, this is connected to this, you got that? Okay, then there's this, and it's just like bang, 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 bang. So I don't know. That's my only regret. But I think for the most part too, like there's pieces of it that I still love, but I don't know. It's just imperfect, and I understand that, and I know that.
Well, I think I speak for Jay Heat and Nick that we certainly enjoyed the film. So it wasn't like it wasn't that much of an issue. Like I said before, to me at least, it flows fine, and I'm like, okay, I get the story. Plus, here's the fun fact: a lot of the movies that you worked on that were like introductions, I count that are like adaptations. I count myself as kind of a like comic scholar, if you will. But a lot of these movies were like my introduction to these books. And
to be fair, Jared, you are the Lord of Comics.
Why, thank you, thank you, Nick. But it's I want to end by saying thank you for like all the years of entertainment you have provided me and the DC audience in general.
Oh no, I mean, hearing just stuff like this, right, is the reward from. I feel like I don't know. It's a pretty laborious career.
I bet.
Yeah.
It's really painful at times, right? And so again, I don't know, especially there was a period, especially towards the end, where I feel like everybody, in social media hates everything. I was just like,
they do. So there was that.
It's like you work so hard to get this thing through, and you think like, okay, this is pretty good, and this is good, right? I remember even like Killing Joke when before, obviously the panel and all the stuff that kind of came after it. I think Bruce really actually liked it. He was just like, I think this is really good, And then of course, once the panel happened, whatever, like none of us talk about any of that. Anymore. Do you know what I mean? It's just like what I'm just saying. It's hard on you because, again, it's just kind of like. I mean, this is how hard it is, right? Because Bruce, and I've done this too. I mean, I remember when like the Doom became Gotham, like when the second act came back, it was animated so horribly. I remember I blacked out.
Oh, really?
Because I was just so upset. I remember Bruce, like on at least a handful of occasions, have said like, maybe this is the one I take my name off of because it's horrible looking, But we end up sort of saving it, right? So, anyways, there's a lot of like hopelessness that you feel sometimes doing this, and then you just power through it, and you just polish the best you can. You iron out, what you can, and then you actually kind of like, wow, it actually looks like something now, and it actually looks pretty good, And then you get shit on the internet, and then everybody hates you, and you're just like, this is the most thankless job ever. Do you know what I mean? It's like you invest all this like energy into like trying to like make something given your limitations, right? And it's like so unappreciated, and you're just
thank you, Brown. There you go.
I gotta say, like I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Like you see a lot of creatives like talk about like fandom being toxic and all that negative stuff. And as a fan myself, knowing that I care about the properties, my immediate reaction has always been like, oh, what do they mean? Fandom isn't toxic. And I gotta say, man, like listening and hearing you talk has honestly kind of opened up a new perspective on things, of like hearing things from like your side of the aisle, like your and whatnot. It does kind of like make me think, okay, maybe these guys are kind of onto something. So I do thank you.
Well,
There are
again,
some that no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Sam.
oh, no, I understand if it's bad. I'm not saying don't call it out, you know, but there are certain things, there are certain caveats to it, I believe, right? Because there's certain things that you just don't like because that's not your thing, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't mind it when people say like, it's not my thing. I didn't like it. I'm perfectly cool with that, you know? But I take offense because I feel like I think it's still well done. It may not be well animated, again, because we don't have the budget for it and we don't have the time to edit it. You know, we have 2 weeks to basically, you know what I mean? Like put music or like the sound effects and all that kind of stuff and edit it all together. It's a very, very short amount of time. We never have enough time to actually, you know, I mean, even on like Death or whatever, like you watch it once, you sort of like make notes, you adjust kind of things, and maybe sometimes I don't even have time to watch it again at the end. You know what I mean? And then you got to ship it. You know what I mean? It's not like you get multiple passes.
I actually thought Death was very beautifully animated.
It was awesome.
Like the only like this is a small nitpick is like that final shot of like the painting. And this is a nitpick, so please don't take this personally.
No.
This is like the one bad thing I can say about it is it's obviously CG. It doesn't blend that. This is a nitpick. This is like a so minor it doesn't even matter. Like I'm trying very hard not to be rude here. Like,
no.
Like,
what's CG? The painting is CG?
Or it looks CG, or like the art style is totally different from like the rest of it. It doesn't look like it matches the rest of like the rest of the cartoon or whatever. But like the whole thing is beautiful. Like it is beautifully animated. The Death looks amazing. And just everything, the whole thing is just gorgeous from start to finish. So please don't be too hard on yourself. You made a masterpiece, sir.
Well, and I'll weigh in on this because again, I'm not familiar with Death as a character, but when I got out of that short, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll go check out her books.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I mean that's the hopes, and I think a lot of you know, especially what Bruce had done, you know, especially back in the '90s. I think most of the sort of general audience has their comic book understanding of the characters through cartoons versus reading comics.
Yeah, true. Yeah, particularly with me, I started on the Justice League animated show because previous to that, I didn't know there was an entire universe. I thought it was just Batman and Superman because I was only watching the live action movies. Then when I'm like, who is this green guy with a ring?
Yeah,
like to be honest, my introduction to Batman was B-Task. So like, yeah, I'm totally in that camp.
That's a hell of an introduction. So there is that. But
I mean, I remember like wow, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now. But there's an actor, right? And he kind of came in and he was at a party and Henry Cavill was there, right? And he was just saying like, and they were like, oh, you know, they were just he was just asking, oh, what are you working on next? I was like, oh, I'm going in to do a voice, you know, for Green Lantern on this whatever. It's just like, oh, like I love the animated stuff. It's just like I watched all the sort of Superman episodes, whatever, to prepare for his role as Superman. And so, yeah, again, I mean, again, it's not a slam on comics because I grew up on comics and I loved comics. Comics was my life, you know. But I think just the lazy, you know, with the wiki people now, whereas, you know, back in the day, whatever, when you were a fan, you were a real fan because it was so hard to find, or you actually had to do work for it. But now you can just look on Wikipedia, you can watch a cartoon, you can watch whatever, and then you can be up to speed on like what's going on.
There's a billion different YouTube videos that like get you up to date with like the lore of the character and whatnot, you know.
But and the whole thing is going back to like being critical with me. I always try to for it to come off with, because when I'm critical of a project, I'm more critical of like a lot of the executive stuff, because I understand, because because you guys do the best you can with the resources you are given, and and that's why whenever I approach something, I always try and find, even if it's something I absolutely hate, I'm like, okay, at least this was good. I like this. I like this. I always try and find like something positive to enjoy because I'm a DC fan through and through. I don't like saying something's like completely irredeemable, which in me, there's never been, short of the theatrical cut of Justice League, that is completely irredeemable.
Wait,
Yeah,
wait.
don't get me wrong, because again, if there's something bad,
Mhm.
I'm not saying don't call it out.
Oh yeah.
But it's just that I feel like it irks me when there's people that just hate it because I don't know, something that doesn't make any sense to me. It's just like you just, or you're calling something because you're misinformed, you know, and you're making it sound like you're smarter than everybody else.
Yeah.
To be fair, once a hate train starts,
Yeah.
You basically get legions of people who hate it because that's just what they're told to hate. Like for example, Nickelback. Like all the people who say Nickelback sucks have probably never listened to a song. And if you did like a blind listen to them, let's like, oh yeah, this music's not bad. Then you tell them it's Nickelback, like, oh no, this music sucks. Or like I'd say I like for example, this like personally, I enjoy the Snyder stuff. And I feel like with most people, you sit them down, you actually watch the movies, they actually tend to like them. You know, and all the people who like parrot, and this is just my own perspective on things, by the way, who parrot these like Snyder criticisms, they're just parroting what other people have said. So it is a bit of a telephone game.
Right.
Or it's like, I can't even count how many times I've been accused of not reading the comics because I'm very open about the fact that, I like Zack Snyder stuff. So they're like, well, you don't read the comics. Or it's like with me also, I have the other unfortunate opinion of not liking the character of Lois Lane. So the Superman fandom comes after me a lot. But the point is, it's like, I'm like, and I always tell people, just because I don't like something that you like does not reflect on you at all. It's just, Sam, I just don't like it.
Right.
Can you do both of us a favor? Can you look in the background of Jared, and what do you see behind him?
A crap ton of books and collectibles. So I did that one. What?
So Sam, would you say
pretty much comics and action figures is Aquaman's trident over there?
So Sam, seeing what you see, is it pretty safe to say that Jared reads comics?
It was kind of funny when I did one. Someone accused me of that. I sent them a picture of that and said, "Okay, try again."
Yeah,
that's just me. I love getting
accuses you of not reading comics. You literally have more comics than they do.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like that's why for the most part I'm like, hey, listen to it. It's enough for me. Even with like the Killing Joke, because I took an issue with the whole Bruce and Barbara thing. I get the story-wise why that happened and like the purpose it serves the story. And honestly, I got another perspective on that from your perspective, and I'm like, okay, I'm like, I get it. Still not necessarily for me, but I still enjoy it for the most part.
Yeah, me and Jared, we've had our debates about it. We're on kind of polar opposites. I'm a bit of an apologist, and like I was saying to Jared, it's supposed to be a mistake. It's supposed to be a bad idea. Like it's not supposed to be something they promote. Because Tim seems to have a bit of a thing for like pairing Batman and Batgirl, like he did that in the Batman Beyond verse and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
And like
that's where I draw the line, because I'm like, personally, he said I'm trying to figure out how to diplomatically say this. It's like he said something like, it's like I was reading an article. He was explaining that particular scene in The Killing Joke, and he goes, "I always felt there was an unspoken attraction between Batman and Batgirl," and I'm like, okay, yeah, Batgirl, yes, but the way at least from my perspective, I don't think Batman would have like given into Batgirl. I think he would have just left, but that's just me. That's just necessarily my perspective.
No, I mean, I've said it as well. It's like, I tried to, I didn't super understand it myself, but in reading it and trying to, put my brain on it and just kind of like try to figure stuff out, I was just like, okay, I think I can make it in a way where this makes a little bit more sense.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I get it. But I think the difficult thing also is, when she's talking to her buddy, the librarian, And we had, in my mind anyway, she was speaking in code. And I think that's kind of how it was, right? Because he's just a regular guy going like, oh, how's your love life kind of thing, right? And even though she's saying that she's, seeing this yoga instructor or whatever, I get it, how it's kind of like, okay, we're talking about an emotional like relationship, about love, and that's how she feels about Batman. But it's not. It's almost like all these things it's about like, I don't know, in my mind anyways, it wasn't about that. But I can see where it could get, because it's writing this line.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
It's one step, but there's actually two steps. The other one is kind of like, okay, she's talking about seeing somebody, and she's talking in terms because she's trying to relate with him about, I'm speaking about this where it could sound like it's about a relationship, but to me, it was just about like her spending time with this guy at night, and they're basically going out to basically fight crime. It's not about, and that's what it's about. I can see the misconceptions, because again, they, bump nasties later, and then
So I'm like, okay, so I get that, and again, that makes a whole lot of sense when you think about it that way. So okay, I can go with that. But Sam, it was a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and we'd love to have you on again.
Oh no, yeah, thanks. I love talking about like this in-depth stuff, even if it's kind of controversial. Like I just don't want to, because even the whole thing about like, I'm not saying people should not hate on things, but I just kind of feel like people are too quick to sort of not understand something.
So I'm going to be bold here for a second. So we're actually going to be reviewing a few more of the DeCamo movies. I haven't run this by Jared, so Jared might be mad. How would you feel if we're probably going to be covering one of your movies here upcoming? How would you like to be there for movie night when we review the movie? We have you there to talk about it with us.
I would be open to that, but again, I don't want to influence your opinion. You know what I mean? Because again, it's just like, again, I'm not trying to basically say like you should like it just because I made it or I worked on it. Because there's certain things that I can't defend as well. And Bruce is very he's like that too. He's not like he loves everything. I mean, like Public Enemies, Bruce hates Public Enemies. I think that is
really
most hated. Yeah, he gives me crap about it like all the time. And so. Anyways, I just
sorry, we're kind of put you on the spot here. I do apologize.
No. But again, it's just like, I want you guys to sort of feel what you feel. I'm not trying to prevent anybody from sort of,
how about this?
You really feel so. It's
we
like
put the idea in your head.
Maybe I'll come in like afterwards, or like halfway through it. Maybe I'll come in.
Yeah.
So you guys can talk about it and then bring it up with me or something, or.
Yeah, we can figure out the details later.
Okay.
You don't need.
Yeah, but I wouldn't mind. Yeah, I mean, I loved talking shop with the.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that it is interesting to get like the perspective of the people that worked on these movies, because it's like you gave me a new perspective on like the whole on like the Killing Joke part. I still don't like that scene, but I appreciate it more than I did previously. Now that I know like all the like stuff behind the scenes and like. And like the stuff that you brought up makes a lot of sense. So I'm like, I still don't like it, but I get it. So
okay,
But yes, we would love to have you on, particularly when we're covering your movies.
Oh yeah, that would be awesome. Just let me know, and if I'm not super busy, then I'll definitely hop on.
Sweet. So on that note, everyone, stay heroic, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks. Bye. I'm just going to play my outro real quick.